We're here for part 2 of this crypto conversation. Last time we just kind of talked about some general overview stuff, I guess. But people out there wanted to know a little bit more about wallets and I guess managing and holding their crypto. So we can kind of start off there. And so with me, I have Jarvis Broughton, Dante. We're just going to have another down-to-earth conversation. So let's get into it.
Let's get it. Man, I got a quick question for y'all. My girlfriend just put me on to Tangem cold wallets. Is that how you pronounce it? So not being here for the last conversation, picking on, could you talk about like what are the benefits of having a cold wallet as opposed to something on like Coinbase?
Yeah. And so for context, like when you have a wallet on Coinbase, I know a lot of people like to say, like, have you ever heard the term, not your keys, not your crypto?
Yep.
What that's referring to is like when you create a wallet, the way that you make sure that you can keep your wallet, even in the sense that like you lose your computer or something of that line. It's a string of numbers that you have to memorize that at any given time you can go to that wallet, put that in, and immediately get access to your stuff. The problem with Coinbase is you don't have keys. And so you're essentially reliant on Coinbase to be a good actor. And also, because Coinbase wanted to make it easy to use, they don't actually let you get real access to your wallet. Like you can see what's in your wallet, but you can't actually do things like, what's an example of something that you can't do on Coinbase that you can't do on Phantom? I'm not sure.
I have a Trust wallet.
So Trust Wallet is essentially, you can access any exchange with your wallet. So you can also access any crypto that is in any decentralized exchange. I'll say to Dante's point, like the thing with Coinbase is that they're essentially the custodian.
Gotcha.
They're holding your wallet, similar to in the traditional system. You know, the banker essentially is managing your account, right? You don't have those assets with you. You go and deposit in the bank. Similarly to that with Coinbase, they have your wallet. They have your keys, which is why they say that if something were to happen to Coinbase, say there's a hack, say there's something else, and you wanted to immediately go withdraw your funds, you can't. And so I think that's, that space, and I think we talked about it last time where we were talking about the difference between centralized crypto products and decentralized crypto products, right? And that element of risk. Because essentially that's what you're trying to abstract away from. It's like when you own your keys, you own your wallet, but also if you lose your keys, then you lost your wallet.
Wasn't there a story about a guy that's been looking in trash cans and dumpsters for like the last 20 years because he lost some cryptocurrency?
Yeah. I'd say like for me, that's the thing about, do you want to take on the responsibility of managing your assets? And I think at some point in history, that was pretty normal. Folks would keep it under the mattress, go bury it out in the backyard, whatever. And then essentially we moved to the point where it was like custodians came in, bankers. Hey, I'll hold your assets for you.
I'll hold this for you.
Yeah, I'll hold this for you. You come
or
get
a little
it
small fee
when you need it. Yeah, give us a little fee. And so the same principle applies here. And that, that exists because, again, people recognize that sometimes there are benefits to allowing, custodial assets, right? Or custodian your assets.
And back to your point about the cold wallet, like that is essentially like the crypto equivalent of keeping your money in a safety deposit box or keeping your money in a mattress.
Got you.
Like cold wallets sometimes do have access to the internet, but the whole point is like it's a USB drive. This is the place where you can keep it in your pocket, go to another country, and just be able to upload it into a different wallet and actually have access to that. And so the difference is it's like whether or not you want the risk of Coinbase being a bad actor versus whether you want to be the person that holds the money in the mattress. But that is essentially why you would choose these different wallets.
What do you guys suggest is like the best place to do research on kind of the best, wallets or platforms to use? I know for beginners, most people probably use Coinbase just because it's the most familiar, has the best branding, marketing. But what do you guys think is like a technical? What are you suggesting or thinking people are like some of the best options?
So like there are wallets that are attached to exchanges, and then there's wallets that are attached to chains.
Got you.
So the wallets that are attached to exchanges, that's kind of what we just described with Coinbase.
Yep.
But when you talk about the wallets that are attached to a chain, it's like, okay, Phantom. Phantom was built specifically for Solana.
Okay.
And so Phantom initially, well, they now have the ability to do Ethereum coins and other coins as well, but initially it was only Solana could trade on this.
Gotcha.
You had MetaMask that was initially only Ethereum could trade on this. There's other wallets for different coins.
Wallet.
Sui has a wallet as well.
Sui.
They call it Slush now.
Slush wallet.
And so if you want a decentralized wallet, a lot of times you start off with what do I want to put in that wallet.
Got you.
If I have a token that was built on Solana, I go to Phantom.
Gotcha.
And so on and so forth. The benefit of having the exchange wallets is that Coinbase, essentially any coin that is on their exchange, their wallet can hold. And you don't have to worry about actually managing, okay, which coin am I going to be putting where?
And that vet security too, right? Because the crypto space is very scary. We talked about last. There are scams. There are things like, how do I trust this? And so when you're really thinking about, I am trusting that Coinbase as a custodian of my assets will not put me in harm's way. Right, they're not going to put anything on their platform that would be considered dangerous, or
Right.
And if they are, they need to have the right disclosures and privacy, all that.
To
let
protect
me know,
you from that.
let me
right.
know, what am I doing here? And that's again that trading of risk and security.
And
No, go ahead.
those are the niches between different exchanges too. It's like, for example, Coinbase is probably considered one of like the safest exchanges because they vet every coin that goes on a Coinbase.
Okay.
And it's like it has to go through an entire process. Like if you get a token on Coinbase, that is like their stamp of saying that this is a real thing that's not necessarily a scam.
Gotcha.
But then you have other exchanges like, let's say, for example, Binance. It is a lot easier to get on Binance than it is to get on Coinbase.
Okay.
And Binance has so many other tokens that you can trade. But they also do have somewhat of a vetting process.
Gotcha.
And then you can go on these decentralized exchanges that, for example, Jupiter, that's on Solana. Any coin that's on Solana can be traded on Jupiter. And so there is no vetting process. It is like kind of buy at your own risk.
Is that how the Doge coin happened? Because it really didn't have any utility, right? Just
Yeah.
I know the average person probably knows
like a
about that
spoof
meme
currency.
coin. The
It's like a
meme
spoof
coin.
currency. It's
Okay.
The funny thing
for
about
developers.
Doge,
Right. Okay.
I mean, yeah, it was initially just a copy of Bitcoin. It was like
Oh,
when
it
Bitcoin,
was?
yeah,
Okay.
when Bitcoin first came out, someone just literally copied the Bitcoin code and just put a dog on it, and that was how Doge was born. And initially, it was just like a joke, like
Someone could post something. I send you some Doge
Yeah.
that represented I like this, and so it's
Right.
like it's a spoof currency. We just
Right,
for
right.
fun. It's like
But people started buying it.
I know people started buying it, and then you had all these feel good stories come from it, like some person made a bunch of money off of Doge and was able to get some surgery that they really needed, or were able to help their mom out of a tight situation, and you'd had this community that was essentially growing. That was, we just think this coin is funny,
Yep.
and you had these feel good stories behind it, and then okay, there's actually incentive in the sense that you can make money off of this. Okay, so that's a thing. And they did things like, sponsoring the Jamaican bobsledding team and things of that nature.
Right.
And so it just kept on growing. And so it started out as a meme. It was literally a joke. No one was really trying to make money off of it. People just thought it was funny. But then over time, as more and more people started buying into it, it just became its own thing.
Came too much.
Yeah, and now it's a whole class and industry of token.
Finessing is not free.
Finessing is not free.
Pivoting subjects here a little bit. I think me, you, and we were just having a great conversation about AI. So I would love to get y'all's opinion on what the impact or the convergence of AI into cryptocurrency, and kind of what are your thoughts on what lies ahead on that, right? I mean, I don't even think people have grasped fully what AI is capable of.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about integrating into something that our community is kind of behind on, and it's already jumping to a whole nother realm. So what do you guys think about, that?
So there's there's a few things. Like there are coins that already exist. Like for example, I want to say it's called BitTorrent. It's like the TAO coin, where the entire purpose of BitTorrent is to, I want to say is they're training an AI on data, and the people that provide that data get compensated for how much data they provide. There's also a coin called Render. That's like a lot of these AIs are trained using GPUs or using these, special chips. And so they were like, what would a decentralized version of this look like? And so people, contribute their computing power just like you would, as a miner, and are essentially providing, computational power for these models. And you can use that to actually run, these different AI models. So like that's more of like the infrastructure of how they're building it out. But I think as the industry, just both AI and crypto, get more and more developed, it's funny because people keep talking about like the whole part about AI, it stole a lot of the data that it was trained on. And it's like kind of, but not really, because when you think about the way that the internet is, you don't actually own anything that you post. And so it wasn't that, Sam Altman came and stole your comment off of Reddit. No, they just trained it on the data that Reddit owned. And whenever you have these pictures or these images that, people post in order to, get publicity, make sale, like whatever reason that you're posting it online, you don't actually own that anymore. So it's not like they stole it directly from you, even if they did steal, what you consider to be your IP. And so it's funny that everybody was laughing at NFTs, but the whole point about NFTs wasn't just to have like a picture of a monkey on your wrist. It was to actually be able to own your data online. Like that is the entire purpose of it. And so it's like, yeah, you could, you right click and copy my JPEG and be like, oh yeah, I have this NFT now. But the difference is that I could actually take you to court and hold you accountable for these things. Yeah. Whereas right before NFTs existed, that just wasn't a thing. And so I do believe that, one, the way that cryptocurrency allows you to own things online will allow people to protect their data from AI. And at the same time, AI will benefit from crypto in the sense that there's a certain amount of computational power that's required to run it. And currently that's calculated in tokens. And it's like, I believe that eventually one day these tokens will actually be used, well, it would just be cryptocurrency. Okay. And so essentially the way that, it'll either, you have that computational power, and that token represents that computational power, and then you'll also be able to exchange it for any other thing of value online. And so we were just having a conversation earlier about like agents actually having wallets that can pay each other to do certain things. Yep. And I just feel like that'll become more and more common.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you touched on most of it. I think that's the, just to extend the I guess the imagination there. It's like you can have agents who are essentially online entities create real world, actions. If you're a business provider, you're a service provider, and your business is online, and an agent has a crypto wallet and can pay you out in a stable coin or whatever, and then you go fulfill that order in the real world and ship something or do something, complete a task, you were essentially, hired by an AI, an autonomous entity. So I think that that's just very interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's like that can happen. But I think that it opens up a new layer of commerce. And I think, we really don't know where a lot of this AI stuff is going. I like to tell people all the time, it's like, look, the people who are building these things are figuring it out as they go.
Day by day.
Literally, day by day. I read something new every other week. Like, we just trained our model to do this. Or research came out and said, we can make it conscious this. And I'm like, okay. So everything's just up in the air. But what I have started to hear, at least from multiple people that I would say are industry leaders, is that AI is going to start to become the operating system for the internet. It's going to become like our OS layer. And so we won't have applications anymore. You'll just have agents on the back end of your computer that are generating in real time through your prompt, right? So what you need.
Right.
So your screen would, I mean, again, I'm conjecturing here, but your screen would be blank and you would prompt, I need this file, etc.
Right.
And the AI would
just go find
spin it up,
yeah.
run it for you in front, right? But to his earlier point, if you have a system like that, and you have a system that's transacting value through currencies, right? You need to verify that certain things are real.
Yep.
And so there's this convergence of AI, which is somewhat probabilistic in technology. So there's a guy out of Silicon Valley, Balaji, and I like his metaphor here. He's like, AI is probabilistic and crypto is deterministic. And so essentially they will come together because you need to verify things in a potentially infinite space when you're talking about doing business or you're talking about managing things, right? So you have to have some type of way to verify that this thing is a thing. And so NFTs become that way of verifying, to this point, data online, right? You can see where an issuer came from. It has a cryptographic hash, a set representation that that it was generated this time by this person, right? So in the world of deep fakes and things like that,
I was about to go there.
Industries can now verify that, hey, we put this out and this came from this person because this is the NFT hash. I don't care if you see 6 other videos with 6 other scripts on it.
Yep.
This is the one that you need to worry about.
The original.
Right? Yep. Exactly, right? And so you have to get to that level of verification. And I think those two industries are going to converge in that way when you kind of think about it like that.
Man, I saw some scary videos on YouTube doing my YouTube rabbit hole. I'm sure we all do. About these new kind of generative systems from the AI standpoint, right? I'm going to tie it back to the crypto, but if you can make these high quality, like animated videos and pictures, like, seems like, to your point, that might be the only way to protect us from deep fakes. Because I think there's been a state talking about watermarking certain AI things, but could NFTs be that kind of watermark for the originals? Because I mean, that's to your point. That's what it was used for, or that's that is why it was created. So,
and I feel like as AI gets better and better, they're going to be able to remove watermarks eventually. So yeah, I do believe that ultimately that hash is going to be the only thing that does determine whether or not something is real.
Right. And then I don't know. What is an NFT? Because you've said it, so I've a bunch of people have a non-fungible token. Yeah, but for our listeners, could you explain kind of what that is? Because I know people have in their idea, but what is from Village Microfund?
Yeah, so basically, like an NFT is just a unique thing online, right? Like there are 2 things that can be transacted on the blockchain. There's the money piece. And then there's the NFT piece, which is like, this is unique. So with money is fungible, which means that if you let me borrow $1 and then I go and lose your $1, I just have to go find another $1 and bring it back to you. And it doesn't matter if it's the same dollar or not. It just matters that it is $1, right? That is fungible. Non-fungible means it's not. So like in the case of if I let you borrow $1 and let's say that dollar was, I don't know, signed by Michael Jackson, right? That is not just a regular dollar anymore. If you lose that $1 and then you try to go back and give me another $1, it's like, okay, no, that doesn't
work.
This doesn't work. No, these are 2 different things.
It's not a compliment.
Exactly. This is unique. And so NFT just is reference to anything that's unique online. And it's like, yeah, we've gotten to like, okay, art is an easy application for it. But I think the biggest application is really going to be documents. Like IDs, deeds, contract, like all these things that you would not want duplicated online or edited online. I feel like that is ultimately the space for NFTs.
Yeah, you just got to verify that this came from who it came from. And so, like, what I think blockchain does, it fundamentally reconceptualizes how we think about trust in a society. And most of our trust in society is based on a lot of record keeping. I trust that your ID says that who you say you are, right? There's a social element. It's like, I know you because I've seen you. Other people know you, right? But then when you have to do business, you have to work with people that you don't know, you start to go down a list of things that you can quote unquote verify. You're born here. You're from here. You live here. You have this business, right? So when you need to verify something in a world of infinite creation, right? You need that cryptographically determined certainty.
Right.
And that's the thing about cryptography. Cryptography, like, again, it's determined. It's like it has to come down to this number, right? It can't be a possibility or a potentiality. And so that's how you start to verify. And so I think, that's where we're really going with it. And, when people will pick this up, I think as AI proliferates, and, people are already afraid of the generative AI. I mean, people are already afraid of deepfakes. And so I think people are going to turn to this eventually and realize, like, okay, how do we now implement this in our business? How do we start to, what needs to be put to an NFT? Right. You know, and it's just outside of the trust factor. You're now able to comport value. And I think that's the thing. The NFT is just representational value. So everyone's point is like, the NFT is not the real thing. Well, if you have a real world thing that you want to comport its value and transfer it without having to necessarily move the thing, it might be costly, whatever, you can put that into a token that represents something that can be held up in a legal case that you now own this thing, even though you've never touched it, never seen it, never been there, but you can trust that that token, which is representing and verifying that this real world thing is legitimate, right? And I think that also leads into the conversation we were having earlier about just, this big thing about tokenizing real world assets and like, where are we going to go with that?
Very exciting. That was where I was going. Good segue. When it comes to tokenizing real world assets, I think we were having a conversation about deeds, right? That was one of the examples that you just used for NFTs. Explain kind of when we say tokenizing real world assets, let's kind of start there first, right? What do we mean when we're saying we're tokenizing, say, a real estate asset? Like I want to buy a house or I own a home or want to buy a home. What do people mean when they're saying tokenize real estate assets?
I think you're changing the representational form of the asset. So when you say you own a house, what do you have?
A deed.
You have a deed. What's that?
Piece of paper.
Piece of paper that's been what?
Issued.
It's been signed,
recorded,
right?
signed,
and you trust that paper, right? That's it. So you're just changing that form of trust. Now it's a token. And see, the thing is, you've removed layers of trust by kind of sinking it down to this token, because where I'd have to trust the institution, I'd have to trust the person who's issuing, I'd have to trust the lawyer to get me the deed, I have to trust that you can find it, the owner who had it, maybe where are the records kept? And so blockchain is just a big ledger. It's just a big record keeping machine, right? And so this is the beauty of it. And it's like everyone's like, well, it's just record keeping. Well, record keeping is very important for society. It's literally the basis of our society,
especially real estate too. Yeah.
Exactly. You want to verify that this thing is where it is. And so we put that trust in the institutions, pieces of paper and people. But now you can remove some of the people and remove some of the paper, and now you have this tokenized asset, which again, when you look at it, it's just a hash string of numbers, right? But it's a unique string of numbers in that you cannot find that same identifier that's supposed to represent that thing.
Then it's also like a matter of, like institutions can give you a title for this house and be like, yeah, you own this house based on the title or the deed. But different institutions have different records. Like you remember a few years back, there was a war between like Invest Atlanta and Clark Atlanta about who actually owned that property in Morris Brown.
Yep.
Things like that happen because there are multiple records of truth. Because there's one institution whose records say this, and there's one institution whose records say that, and now they have to go to court, and there has to be this entire process to figure out who actually owns what and who has the legitimate rights to this. And so a lot of that can be just essentially abstracted out through having one general source of truth. That's like the beauty of a blockchain, is that there is that entry that literally anyone in the world can see and that they can jump on and verify. And that is why you see places like Baltimore and New Jersey that are putting all their deeds and their titles onto the blockchain, because then it's like you only have to check one place versus having to check with various different institutions.
County, the city, the lender.
They all need to string all their stuff together. Put it all on the blockchain, because now you can verify. And then, it's about trust, right? There's also the privacy issue, and we can talk about that in another, space. But like, you can trust that things are where they are and that they are what they say they are and that it's successful. I don't have to have the money to go hire a lawyer to go do the digging through the county tax records, or
the title company.
Company, all that, so
time is money, and they're saying that's the biggest thing about that. From being in the real estate space, that's going to save a lot of people a lot of money. Yeah. I think we were just talking about New Jersey downloaded like 300,000 of those records. I mean, I think from our point of view, if you just started with I would start with like all homes built in the last 5 years, right? because you have a very short chain of records.
Oh, to start implementing,
Right, to start
like, just
implementing.
put all these last 5
Yeah, if we were
people
going
on
to start
there.
in Georgia doing this, I would probably start with the newest properties that were the easiest to onboard.
And then
retroactively get all the older ones because they're going to be the hardest to find.
Yeah,
I mean,
get my title deed.
Right. We don't know where it is. Or we can't find a family member, right?
Yeah,
and then that's going to take 6 months. And then you got to put it in the newspaper and advertise it and make sure nobody claims it.
And that's a lot of the houses in the West End. I remember when I was in school, I was doing some community organizing work through my scholarship program, and we essentially were trying to figure out who owned the bandos. We had to go and knock on doors in these random bandos, and that was my community service. I was literally walking through the West End, knocking on homes to see if there was someone there to actually try and find, who actually owns this property. Because to your point, when we're trying to revitalize our neighborhoods, when we're trying to change things, like, there are systems and processes that you just have to go through because that's the system that's in place. But if the records are lost, if it's unable to find whatever, it becomes hard. It becomes a struggle, and people get demoralized and all that. I see this as a revitalization of the ability for people to take agency and ownership and action in their communities by saying, well, we know the records, we know we can keep up with stuff, we know we can determine this, that, and the third. I think that's just that's where we're at. It's just how, seemingly it's fast, right? If Jersey's picking it up, right, that's pretty clear indicator that at least people are looking into this and like, okay, we see benefit here. And I think that also is just like leads us into another part of the conversation that I think we should have is just like regulation. How are we actually regulating how these things are managed legally, policy wise? I don't think there are people at the highest level even really considering some of these things, right? Just because the general narrative of crypto is so negative.
Money.
Yeah, it's negative, and it's all about making money, and it's like scammers, and you got a man in the White House doing crazy things, bribing people over tokens.
Has his own token.
Yeah, no, it's just doing stuff, right? Yeah. But also simultaneously to that point, you can do that. Like that, you couldn't do something like that before the system existed, and so someone found a use for a tool, right? And we might not like their use of the tool, but how are we going to use the tool? How can we think about using the tool for our benefit? And that's where people have to kind of get to. Don't stop allowing people out here to do what they want to do with stuff because you're afraid of it or you don't understand it. They took the time to go figure it out, and they're like, oh, wait, I can do this?
Right.
And then they did it, and it worked, and now you're mad. And it's like some parts of that, it's like, well, you just got to kind of eat that because that still exists for you too.
Yep.
That ability to crowdsource and create. You can go create a token right now with your friend.
You too
can be a scammer. I'm just saying, man. Like that's what we got to get.
Copy the code and put a dog on it.
Right? But that's also the beauty of, I think, value, which is just it's a philosophical conversation. Yep. And what is value? And you talk about utility tokens. You talk, representationally, Doge has no value. It doesn't do anything, but I value it enough to pay for it. That sets a floor. That sets a market.
Yep.
That's money.
And there's a community of people who are willing to do the same.
That's it. It's
now
so
you've created a market.
It's so simple. It's so simple that it's hard. It's so simple that it's ridiculous. But that is the nature of how our I won't say monetary theory, but that's just how money works.
But I was going. So how do we? To your point, right? How would our community in this example leverage tokenization of real estate assets, right, as a pathway to ownership, like community ownership? I know right now there's platforms and ways to do that, but it seems like cryptocurrency could be like a really easy way to do that.
Boy,
right?
do I got a platform for you?
Yeah, when you're talking about community ownership, it's like if you wanted to buy a part of a house, it's like how would you? Is right now, there are platforms that allow you to do it, but you do have to go through their process, and it's like there's costs associated with that, and there's an amount of trust that you have to have in that institution to be like, there is a house that this piece represents a part of, and it's just if someone pushed their deed on the blockchain. And then y'all collectively, like 30 people collectively invest in that deed, then y'all all have a piece of deed, and that is, can be court verified. And so I think it just makes the process a lot simpler. It's not like people haven't been trying to do this for a while. It just removes the middleman, which is where all the uncertainty lies.
Right.
Yeah, and you talk about generational wealth building. If that family owned that asset for a couple 50, 30 years, it appreciates, hopefully. And then just say one day emergency happens or they want to do some other venture, they decide to sell it. It can be broken up equitably amongst the members who hold it, and I don't got to go through a bunch of lawyers and paperwork. I see the asset, I see my share of the asset. If it's sold, I get this much. Click button, boom, I have it. Okay. Like, that's the speed of it all.
Yeah, and even if someone wants to leave, it's like, if in a traditional sense, if all three of us bought a house and it's like, I want my money back, I can force a sale on that transaction to actually get my money back. Whereas in the case of, blockchain, it's like, I can literally just find someone to buy my part out.
And just keep it, keep the integrity of the partnership and you guys' ownership, and then our ownership in this scenario, and you get to get your fee out.
I want to leave. I'm tired. I don't want to keep.
Yeah,
so I get it immediately, and y'all don't have to do anything. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I was saying in the last time we talked, like with our other guests, it's imagination that has kind of come into play here. Try to this point. Also, it's not that we haven't not thought about these things, and not that they haven't been tried or done. It's just like the barriers of entry, the paperwork, all the things that you have to go through. Some of those things are now, that was the beauty of the internet the first round, right? Just imagine all the things the internet has allowed us to do in terms of transacting value across the world. Now you have another system that essentially provides a money layer on the internet to speed up that process of value transaction. And then you add these autonomous entities that can hold wallets and do things too. It's like, okay,
top of that.
Yeah, we're just speed running innovation at this point. It's actually a little overwhelming. We were talking, like, even when we were trying to think about this podcast, it's like there's actually too much. It's too much going on. I don't have the time to sit down and think through half of these things. Because I'm interested and I'm a little neurodivergent, I will stare at the screen for hours and be like, okay, this is interesting until it's not. And I'm like, all right, and you gotta go do something else.
Right. And then I guess to stay on that topic, but kind of get into the DeFi part, right? When people are tokenizing or trying to buy real world assets, just to use as an example, where are they going to get the loans for that, right? These decentralized or these DeFi platforms. Can you explain kind of what that looks like?
Yeah, so
DeFi.
So there's basically you start with that. So in decentralized finance, there are platforms like, for example, AAVE, which is one of the older ones, one of the OGs, where it's like, if you want to be able to lend out money to somebody, like in a traditional sense, you'd have to actually go and find that person. Whereas this platform, you can just kind of plug into, and there's a person on the other side that's trying to borrow money. They just match you up, and you go about your way on that transaction. And again, it goes for lending and borrowing. So in a situation where, let's say, like a few years back, I had a pretty sizable amount of cryptocurrency, and
He was balling.
He was balling.
I'm not gonna put the number out there, but I
remember the days.
But while I had a lot of value in crypto, my credit was terrible.
Gotcha.
And so I couldn't go to a bank and get even a credit card for $5,000. But I could go to an institution like BlockFi, which isn't technically decentralized finance. It's more like automated finance because there is still a company behind it, but it still works the same. It's like they can lend you, you can lend and borrow money without necessarily having to know who you are as an individual.
Gotcha.
Just to be clear, BlockFi blew up in that FTX scandal.
But they're back though, and they paid everybody
came back.
They paid
everybody
back.
They paid their fees.
And it wasn't their fault. It was FTX.
No, it is FTX's fault.
It is FTX's fault. It wasn't BlockFi's fault. But yeah, in that sense, I could get a 6-figure loan where it's like I couldn't get a $5,000 credit card. And so in situations like that, if you're cash heavy and have terrible credit, that is a way to bypass that. Or if you just, let's say you already have an asset like a house and then you tokenize that house, you can also use that in collateral on some of those same DeFi. Like it's a few extra steps that you'd have to do that. But it just opens up the door to like what it means to have collateral and actually be able to finance things.
And that means, so in someone like in your case too, that would mean that you could leverage your, cryptocurrency. Let's say if you got Bitcoin, right? You could actually get a loan to go buy a home with cash instead of using the Bitcoin. But you kind of, you basically lended money to yourself.
Yes.
Got you.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think DeFi, the interesting thing is that you essentially become a market maker. Like, that's essentially what DeFi is allowing you to do. Like, you've taken away the ability, or rather, you've opened up the ability for people to create markets.
And then you keep you're also taking out the middleman too, which you've been talking about, because now you don't have this lender that's really.
But also, you might want the middleman. See, that's the thing, right? Like, again, I might not want to worry about my, the debt to leverage ratio of the asset. That I don't want to think about that.
What about more about the deed itself, though? Right? Like, that's when you have a lender involved. They hold the security deed, which means you don't really own your home. In this situation, like you guys keep saying, it's really putting more control back in the hands of the people. And the person, that's what the decentralized, like, I think.
But I think also, just to kind of not belabor it, but like that's where we have to start having these honest conversations, right? How much of this do I want to take, ownership for? And I think it's also where it leads you to people taking new jobs, right? Custodian assets isn't new, and we understand what it means to live. Like, there's just some people for, personal preference or lack of ability cannot manage their assets for themselves, right? But they should still be able to have assets. They should be able to participate. And so I think these systems, while they are cutting some people out, there will still remain some level of centralization. There will still be these human points that need to be there. For those true avant-garde, we're straight over here in crypto land. It exists for you. It's there. But, for the every average day person, you don't have to worry about that space.
Right.
What we have to worry about, right, because I feel like we're in the space of, like, translating these things to the everyday average common person, right? And so I was saying earlier, jokingly, but, like, in DAO, the company that we're building is meant to allow the everyday average person to essentially own a house collectively. Right. If you wanted to use our platform, we have a real world asset. You hold that asset on the platform. You control what happens with that asset. And so now we provide that. And so I think like that's where, we're really trying to figure out that middle and providing people, that translating or that bridge. Right. Because we already know folks ain't we're in the DGen. We'll play in the meme coins. We'll take the hits. We'll take the burns. Right. And then come back and say, all right, look, this is what's happening over here. But this is what that means for us over here, because you can do it here, you can do it here now.
Right.
Let's change something. And I think that's where folks have to kind of start to get with and get off the narratives of the scammers and the Trumps and all that. It's like, look, they're using a tool that exists. You have the same opportunity to use said tool. What do you want to do with it?
Right.
And a lot of times when we talk about decentralized finance in general, it's like when you talk about removing the middleman, a lot of times in finance, the job of the middleman is to put up the money. And it's like there's only a few people that can afford to actually put up the money to a lot of times to make that transaction happen. And so it just goes from like, okay, what happens when it goes from just one organization or one really wealthy, person that can put up the money to make this transaction go through versus literally having 1 million people contribute that same amount of money and then be able to be compensated for it.
Yeah, what's that birthday thing? If everybody gives you $1 on your birthday, but now you got to fight against people, right? Why should I give you $1? It's like, look,
did nobody give me $1 for my birthday?
Nobody gave me. But it's like, don't worry about that. I ain't get
you
one
didn't
either.
think about it.
I didn't get one either. It's okay.
Right.
We got to do things better for the people that come after us.
In a year, I'll give you back $1.05.
Ooh, right.
That's a good one. And on the top, so what are, I guess, some of the best, DeFi platforms right now? I think you said AAVE or BlockFi was another one. And your experience, what are like the kind of the top ones right now? If someone wanted to go do some research on DeFi. I know it's a layered question.
Yeah, because DeFi is kind of taking a hit, and specifically in the U.S.
Gotcha.
Because can't really even access most of the exchanges here.
Why so?
Because they were trying to. I'll say once they'll say we were protecting our consumers in some way they were, but also they were afraid, right? You have institutional players who see like you're creating a bank, you're lending, get that out of here.
Right,
we don't want to talk
competition.
about that. Yeah, get that out of here.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's also situations like BlockFi. It's like banks do have a lot of regulations that they have to have on them to,
ensure that your assets are protected.
Exactly.
And, you can get money back if something goes wrong. Which again, these are benefits of centralizing, and that's why I said it's not just this. We just need to get off the system. It's like things that were created in the traditional system are important and necessary, like regulations. It's just that the way that system has calcified over time,
right,
it no longer allows the average everyday person to benefit or even access it. Right. I saw a podcast. Someone was like, "You shouldn't even worry about investing unless you have at least $1 million." And I was like, "Well, shit, excuse me." I was like,
talking about leaving out 90% of the world.
Yeah, it's like I can't even play the game.
Right.
And it's like, but that's the thing, right?
Especially when it's like we've now approached the point where you need to invest to survive, because like the job, like the money you get from jobs just isn't going to cut it anymore, especially when you talk about retirement.
So we have fundamental fractures in our social contract and our traditional systems that are just, at this point, you can try and salvage them. I'm not going to stop people who are trying to do that, but I think we're at a place where we just have to evolve, and we have to kind of move forward with the intention that there are new things, but don't forget some of the old things. Like, how do we protect people who are in these spaces? We were just having a conversation yesterday. There are people who are trying to figure out how do we protect the average consumer who doesn't even know about Bitcoin. I think there was a woman who got scammed. She went and put some money into a Bitcoin ATM and was lost her life savings. And like, you don't want things like that to happen. And there should be some type of redress. When these things were created, to that point about it being deterministic, it was meant to go one way and stop. Like, that's it. You trust, it's verified. That's what people wanted. But our social world doesn't work like that. And, you want to create opportunities and ways for people to have some type of safety net, some security, because at the end of the day, there's always risk in everything you're going to do, but you can at least you can guarantee that, hey, you won't get burned too bad, right? And that's FDIC insurance, right? Okay, we can't save you from everything, but at least give you $250K.
At least give you back $250,000.
At least $10 million to get started again. But heck, most folks ain't got $250K. That's the price of a small starter home if you had to go sell it, right? And that's a good little safety net. If all things go well, I can sell my house or I can get $250K, whatever, and start again. We need that similar space for those who are in crypto.
And then there's also like just the issue of it's in nobody's best interest to lend to 1 million small people. Like, which one of these centralized institutions is actually going to take the time to go into that's why you see all these banks closing the branches in poor neighborhoods, because it just doesn't make sense for them to continue to maintain that office in order to serve that population, because they don't use enough of the services to make that make sense for them. And it's like for a bank, and be like, cut that off. But like for your average person, it's like, I can make what percent in terms of return? That makes a lot more sense. And so it opens up the opportunity a lot more, because the only people that were really making money from serving poor people were people that were doing payday loans. And the whole thing about payday loans is we have these really high interest rates because y'all are
risky.
Yeah. And so
that never made sense to me. You know that we are already risky, and I need this because I need some money. I probably need the lowest interest rates in the market to make sure I can just give you the money back.
They're like, if you're going to default halfway through, we want to pull as much money out of that situation as possible.
Right.
And so, not to say that it's right, but it's that's the way that they're thinking about it. Yeah. And just, it only makes sense for them to think about it because they put so much money into creating this institution that needs to continuously grow. Versus where people are just, if you're looking for a passive income, now you can actually be a financial intermediary and kind of let your money work for you in ways that it didn't work before.
Yeah, heck, you're going to have AI have your money work for you. AI, wealth advisors are coming. They're coming, bro.
Like,
would you trust that?
He says they suck at math now, and they do kind of suck at math, but they're getting better. In all this, it's getting better. They're coming,
we just taught a course on AI, so it's like I fully embrace AI and the possibilities, but I would never trust AI to actually like manage my money in that way. Just because the way that it makes mistakes is, there are certain things that happen in the market that people can't predict, and AI, because they have a certain algorithm that's supposed to trade certain ways in certain situations, I just see that as an easy
that's if
way
you have it investing for you. I'm talking about just general managing your your balance sheets, your portfolio. Like, you ain't got to get into the investing piece. Like I said, I think it'll get better. I think it'll get better.
I still don't trust it.
Hey, you don't got to trust it now. I'm just saying I think it'll get better. And, but again, all bets are off at this point. I mean, we were talking earlier, like everything that we thought was the future is now. Cloning, nanobots, flying cars, underwater cars,
3D print organs,
lasers, whatever, space data centers. They launched that last week. Like it's all up there, man. Like at this point, I'm just like, well, if these things are going to continue to proliferate, despite my concerns or not, like how do we at least benefit and make the best use of it? Because I'd rather do that than look at it and just, be like, no, never. This isn't, why. And it's like, look, there are things. We exist in a time of change, unfortunately. I think previous generations were able to be stable in ways that we just aren't. You could project out 20, 30 years in the future and say, roughly speaking, I do these things that'll look like this. We don't have that. I can't look out 6 months. I can't look out 6 months and be like, yeah, it's going to look like this, because the timeline of exponential everything, destabilization, technological innovation, it's just so much happening. And I think that's just where we're at, and I'm trying to, ride the wave. Yes, that's where I'm at.
I guess a good question. So with your background, and we're talking about risk, right? And people getting comfortable with this. What are some ways or what some methodologies that you go about doing research, right, to help you kind of gauge risk of certain decisions, whether it's an NFT or picking a cryptocurrency to invest in? Like, hey, I got an extra $100. Let me go buy some Ethereum. What are some ways you think?
I stay safe. I say the safest bet is, you look at your two big horses, which is Bitcoin, which popped all this off, and then Ethereum, which allows like the customization of crypto in a way. Like those are your two bets. And like research wise, like it really comes down to a lot of things. I think it depends on what you're trying to research for. Like, again, a lot of people think about crypto and like, I need to invest in this thing so I can get more money or return. So they're looking at it from metrics of, how much is it worth today? Yep. What could it potentially be worth tomorrow? From, market cap, valuation.
Like a traditional stock almost.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's totally cool. For me, I'm looking at it from the tech side. So it's not that I'm not interested in investment or value. I've played around in meme coins, all that. But for me, I'm always looking at, all right, what does this token, if it has a utility, and it's not just a narrative, right? Knowing that for sure. Yep. Is it just people talking about something that they're willing to pay for? Cool, that's fine. But does this actually do something? Does this token fundamentally change a process, change a system? Those are things that are interesting to me, and that's what I'll look at from that end. But you really determine when you talk about, research and safety, and, it's like, what are you interested in? And then finding how people kind of look at those metrics and then just applying that.
Gotcha. And I would say always start with like there's CoinGecko, CoinMarketCap. These are what are called like
aggregators.
Aggregators.
The token aggregators. They find all the tokens in the market, and they do all the research kind of for you. So they should have links to a website,
exactly.
Maybe a portal for a discussion group. You should be able to see what they're doing. Right, a lot of these companies either should be building in public, right, or tokens and building in public.
And so when you go on those, they generally have like, okay, this is the website, this is the white paper. If they have a white paper, they generally have a roadmap, things of that nature. And so start there, but that's more like if you already know what the coin is that you want to invest in, or you're just, looking through, let's say, the top 10 or top 25 and just reading through that can give you a general idea of the industry. YouTube is also a wealth of knowledge, but it is kind of hit or miss because you got some people that actually know what they're talking about, and you got some people that are just taking advantage of the fact that it's popular at the moment.
Content creators.
And you got to realize these people are communities, right? There are people who believe, and belief is a very important part of this, but they believe in certain things, and so it's either this or nothing, and they'll become evangelists. Because Bitcoin maxis, you got Ethereum heads, all that. So. I'd say like we're in the research part, like just making sure you're not getting caught up in the hype. True. Hype cycles, like, and again, it's not that narratives aren't useful, right? You see it, a narrative can literally create a market where there's no value, right? But it's like knowing that you're buying into a narrative, having the wherewithal to say, all right, I know that there's nothing here, but I do believe this narrative. I believe this narrative because I have seen communities who started with nothing but a narrative get a pricing, right? They set them out, people started buying the token, and then that narrative evolved into a stronger community. And then that community, because they had funds now, said, all right, we want to donate here. We want to do this. We want, right? So narrative, I don't want to distill that narratives aren't important, but it's like, don't get caught in those, because sometimes it's just hype. We going to be this, and then it turns into nothing.
Because basically you're saying it's not tangible. Right? Yeah. That keyword that you just said, that I would point that camera, utility. Utility.
I better do something.
That's the word.
I'd say that the difference, like, between utility and narrative would be like the difference of, okay, you find this small business that really has a mission versus you have a brand that is, let's say we're trying to sell T-shirts. It's like you can have a brand that is literally just, okay, we like this because it's cool. Like, it could turn out to be supreme. Right. But the vast majority of them turn out to be nothing. Yep. And then on the other hand, it's like, okay, well, you have a bunch of startups that are promising to change the world in these different ways, and one of them is going to be Uber, and then the rest of them are going to be nothing. And so I would evaluate a lot of crypto just on those measures. If you see a meme coin that you really like, do you think that this could become the next $1 billion brand? It's like, potentially, probably not. Right. You know what I'm saying? But potentially. And just have a really clear idea of, why. And so in terms of utility is very easy to look up. Just when you find a coin, I would always say check multiple sources, because a lot of what's happening in crypto is hearsay. I'd say the last bull run, you probably had mostly vaporware, people that were making promises like, okay, if we have this type of technology, this should be possible. And so a lot of times we're raising money to make the project a real thing. But now we're actually at the point where a lot of these promises have either been exposed as, okay, this isn't happening, or these things already exist and people are using it. And so I like to invest in things that I actually use. Salon is one of my bigger investments. Airdrome Finance is one of my bigger investments. And all those are products that I actually use myself. And then, of course, I have meme coins. It's like, I have a troll coin. I think that, has an opportunity to be, potentially the next Supreme or whatever large brand that literally is just, because it's important to the culture, people buy into it. Right. And so I go based off of that. And if you're looking for more cultural narratives, I say Twitter is an amazing place to find the cultural narratives. In terms of utility, it's almost useless. Gotcha. But in terms of actual, like, finding these brands and seeing what's popular and seeing what's going to run up, Twitter is
you gotta follow the right people.
You
have people out here who are just, again, they're speculating, they're hyping up things, and it's the next whatever. If you're not discerning, and so again, you don't remove that human element of, you got to do your DYOR, do your own research, please. Always, and I think AI makes that easier now.
It does.
You still got to read.
Good question to ask you for this, right? A popular coin that I'm sure everybody has heard over and over this year is XRP, right? Is XRP narrative or utility? Right, let's use that as a context of that conversation. So, just because we know it's been everywhere, right?
Yeah, I have my thoughts.
I would say that XRP is way more narrative than it is utility. Like, XRP was one of the earlier coins to pop up. And their whole kind of sell was the fact that it's actually one of those rare mixes of a coin that presents itself as utility, right, but actually became narrative over time.
Because the utility never happened.
It's a lot of MOUs.
Yeah. The banks are going to use
we will
this.
be.
Exactly.
And I'm like, I'm not. Yeah. Maybe internally in tests that we don't know about or not privy to the public, maybe that is the case, but you don't really see it. But again, folks don't need that to buy something. And that's my whole point. Like, and true. And that's why I said narratives aren't to be discounted. Like, a narrative will send people to war.
Yeah. You got governments backing that with no banks, central.
That's what they're saying.
They're saying
that.
But that's what
they keep saying it. And I'm like,
saying it.
Okay, so
here's the agreements.
Do I know that the back rails of a Bank of America now runs on XRP? Right. I don't know.
But here's the thing, though, about XRP, because like their whole narrative was the fact that we want banks to use us to be able to transact, globally. And look, there is an entire foreign exchange desk whose job it is to move money from one country to another, from one currency to another. And so That's not to say that it doesn't have a purpose. There is a huge purpose. But the issue is that once banks kind of found out about it, they didn't use XRP. They just developed their own blockchain. And so
that's a big.
And that's you see this big competition like everybody.
So they're competing with it instead of adopting it.
Exactly, and everyone keeps being like, oh, you know, the SWIFT system said they're going to use XRP, but also like those relationships were made so long ago.
At least that, 5, 6 years.
Yeah, there's at least 3 or 4 crypto currencies on that list of people that are supposed to be working with SWIFT, which is basically the payment processing system for the American dollar globally.
Yep.
And like 3 of those cryptocurrencies are like literally dead coins that no one uses anymore, that are also on that list of like SWIFT compatible.
You talking about the ISO 20? It's ISO something, I can't remember. Yeah, I know you're talking about. I mean, and so that's the thing, right? If you have official documents from large institutions who are in their mind creating their regulatory standards of we will accept these, and they kind of here's our bet we want, and you put those in those documents. So again, all I know is what's put out in the public, and if I'm doing my own research and I see that JP Morgan, the SWIFT system, whatever, they're saying if we were to engage in this space, these are the tokens that we would approve and use. If I'm an investor, I'm like, okay, that's more safety, that this is a good bet. But to this point, it's like those were made back when people really didn't think this was a thing. But now it's like it is, and so I can just make my own. I can compete, and so are those deals still relevant?
Those words even relevant? That conversation even relevant?
And from the perspective of a bank, it's like, why would I use Ripple when so much of the market already has an influence on that when I can just make my own from scratch?
And get the most value out of it.
Exactly.
Because I created it.
If it's the same technology. And now it's like, actually the technology is even better.
Yeah, because banks saw the original use case for crypto in the remittance part, right? And that's what, BTC was largely kind of, set to fix and help that. But it's like, I can transact value, and I don't got to go through, 3, 4 people, 3, 4, 5 business days. It's just 5 minutes, whatever. And so for them, it's just their bottom line. It's cheaper to send money.
Right.
That's just all it is. It's cheaper to send money using blockchains. And that's what banks realized over time. It was just an internet fad for, folks online who are like, this is cool that it exists and we can do all these things. And then it's like, magic internet money. Was that the meme? It was like magic internet money.
Jamie Dimon telling everybody not to use it.
And
then buying it because it's like
you're
not if you're in that level, in my opinion, if you're at that level and you're in that space and you're around all these ideas all the time, everyone's got an idea about how to make money. You don't really have time to vet and look at things, right? But if you are smart and you understand what cryptocurrency, why it was created and what it's meant to solve, not what it's turning into, not what it's doing, because it's evolved totally beyond kind of some of its earlier conceptions, and that's just natural. You have to pay attention to that because as a financier, it hits your bottom line. It sets up entirely new financial markets. Now, you can be looking and say, poo-poo, it's not going to do nothing. I manage trillions of dollars every day. Your crypto market's, less than a couple $100 billion or something? Like, I don't worry about that money-wise. But technologically, I need to pay attention to that. I have to, especially if it keeps coming up.
Yeah.
And it's just back to the XRP point. What I think XRP has done a really good job of is, one, convincing, like in politics, like they have name recognition. They are very public. They're in the front with everything. They've gotten really good with this administration. And so they do really well on that. And then also just in marketing and branding in general. And that is where I feel like their narrative really flies, because I'm always asking, like, I don't know anyone that actually uses XRP. Like, I don't know a single person.
Because you asked me that one day. I asked you about that. I was like, man, what's up with this XRP thing? We thinking about a token of how we can provide ownership to real estate assets for the creative community.
And then it's like
He's like, nobody's building anything on XRP.
Exactly. But it's like every time someone new asks me about crypto, it's like, oh yeah, I know Doge, I know XRP. And it's like, I was like, how do people keep finding out about it?
But think about it. What you just said. But those were those earlier bets. It was Bitcoin, Ethereum, Doge, Litecoin, and then Ripple at the time before they got sued and had to change their name. That was it. And that's most people's recognition of the crypto sphere, the crypto space, right? And so it's like basically outdated data. Same thing's happening with AI now. I see people referencing things that were essentially research reports from 2-3 years ago. When you talk about data consumption, when you talk about how the models are made, how they use,
we're in a whole new world.
These things have evolved so far. We
move so fast.
We're at scale tip. They're scaled up. They actually are like, hey, we don't know. We got to rethink our base assumptions about how we make these things because we've reached the pinnacle of where that could really go. As far as some of them are saying, and we still haven't even figured out how what they just made implements into what we got today, and they're already trying to improve that vastly beyond. The same things happen in crypto. People are trying to take cryptocurrencies and blockchain stuff and fit it to the world. And so if you're not in these spaces researching consistently, it is moving beyond you. I mean, even if you are consistently in it, it's moving beyond you because you just can't aggregate that much information at one time. And so, yeah, I mean, XRP, like I said, I'm not against it. Again, I'm not against the narrative guy. They XRP armies out here. They're gonna come. They're gonna let you know.
I treat XRP like a really big meme coin.
Okay. that professionals are talking about. It's not like a cultural.
It's the professionals
narrative.
meme coin,
right?
Yeah.
We're not a meme coin. We're a product. We're products.
No, we have a Patagonia vest on. So.
I mean, XRP. I mean, I think that's just it got longevity. I mean, also how the invested thing goes. Once you sunken cost fallacy. Once you're into something, it's gone. Hey man, we coming back. But look, it did rally. I remember looking at it one day and I was just like, it was like 20 cents or something. I was just like, hey man, I should buy some XRP. I said, hey man, just put 100 on it. Let's just see. It bumped up to it was like the next month or two went to like $1 or something. It came back down, but I was just like, hey man, you get a nice little return.
Here's the thing. Well, I'm talking a lot of trash about XRP. When I first saw it, it was like 0.0003 cent. And I remember someone asked me about it then, and I was like, I'm not really into it. And now it's like, had I bought it at that point and just sat on it, I'd probably be part of the XRP army too.
Hey, but don't FOMO. Don't FOMO. Don't FOMO. FOMO will do you in. Do not FOMO. I've done it for you.
Because you're going to catch it on the back end. You're not going to catch it at the time that everybody else does.
By the time you're hearing about it, you're exit liquidity.
Yes.
But by the time it's reached the mainstream consensus, the people that have wanted to make the most money off of it have already made their money, and they're just looking for a way to get out.
For sure. I mean, same things happen with AI. Everybody's talking about the bubble. I'm like, look, you're going to have some stuff in there that is just trash. Most of it's ChatGPT wrapper. Sorry to tell you. If you're a business and someone's selling you AI capabilities, it's probably a ChatGPT wrapper. You can go do it yourself.
Build your own agent.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like, but there are some legitimate use cases. There are some models that are doing things. I mean, they're even moving from large language to small language, right? They realize you don't need this big old model to do half the capabilities that you'd want out of it. You make a smaller one, much cheaper, lighter, easier, comportable, all that. So that's what I was saying. Like people's understanding of some of these things, even crypto had its day. I was telling people, it was like, oh, you still in that crypto thing? When it was in the bear market, it's like, yeah, I am. Right. You're thinking about it because money's being lost and all that. I'm looking at it from a longer horizon, which is that, hey man, something has fundamentally been introduced to our world that didn't exist before, and people are using it in ways that didn't exist before, and so like you gotta take notice of that.
It's the tech part, like you said. You're not looking at it from a Apple stock. Like it's Bitcoin's doing well now. I want to hold it for 10 years. You're thinking about the utility, again, of how we can apply this in our use cases for our businesses.
And that's very traditional investing advice, ain't it?
It is.
That is very traditional. And onto that note, I think we should just talk about the market cycles in general, and just like, what is your time frame when investing?
Up, down,
because like people like to talk about like, okay, Bitcoin this year has actually lost value, and it's very rare that Bitcoin has a year where it loses value, but it's never been 2 years in a row.
Right.
And it's like when you expand that time horizon on 5 years, there's no asset that's outperformed Bitcoin.
Zoom out
on a 5 year. Yeah. So it's like we have these very volatile dips that in the moment look very scary, but once you zoom out, you realize like, okay, if I'm looking at this from a longer term time horizon. Short term is like a popularity contest. It's like voting, like the thing that's most popular is going to raise the quickest. But long term, it is a weighting scale. And it's like the thing that people use the most is the thing that's going to ultimately grow. And it might take a while. You might have to wait, but the best investors are really good at sitting on their hands for long periods of times. But then there's also the crypto cycle, which is, I mean, traditionally we've been taught it's a 4-year cycle because of every 4 years Bitcoin has its halving. The last one was last year, 2024, and generally the way that it goes is like the year of the halving. That's when investments start to bubble. You start to see the first people kind of like start to buy in, and then that second year, the year after the halving, is really where like the bull market really kicks off, and so that's when you have people making like unrealistic returns, like unbelievable returns. And then you generally have that blow off top around about a year, and then it ends up falling. And traditionally, we believe that it's been because of the halving cycle that this happens. But I wonder if when Satoshi Nakamoto designed Bitcoin, he designed it via not just the political cycle, like when we have our elections, but also the business cycle. And so the political cycle is as the politicians are about to go into essentially re-election, like they want people to be happy. The easiest way to make people happy is just flood the market with money, so people feel like they're doing better. And when you flood the market with money, like, it's bad for the dollar, but it's really good for Bitcoin, because that was the entire reason that Bitcoin was developed, was that, all these bailouts were happening and you flooding the money with markets, and essentially the people that were holding the US dollar, that were saving, that couldn't afford to invest, were the people that, got hit the most and lost most of their purchasing power. And so, kind of lost my train of thought.
You're talking about liquidity, the 4-year halving cycle.
So that's the political side. But then there's also the business cycle, which happens around the same time, and it just goes off the fact that like businesses take off loans, and so when they take out the loan, they have a lot more money to be able to spend when the government floods the market with money. And then they have to pay that off over years. And so it's like that first year, they're going to spend a lot more than they have. So that second year, they're going to have to start to pay it off. They're going to spend less than what they have, and just as it goes. So like that all contributes to the amount of money in the market. And cryptocurrency in general responds to liquidity. If there's a lot of money in the market, it's going to shoot up. If there's not a lot of money in the market, it's going to come down. And so the reason that I bring that up, and it was like saying traditionally it's a 4-year cycle, is because in 2021, a lot of businesses got like an extra year to pay off their debt because of the way that the economy was going during COVID. And so as they got that extra year to pay off their debt, it adds an extra year to the business cycle. And so when they have that money to spend, it's like, it's going to take place over 5 years instead of 4.
It added an extra year.
So people are saying that they think this market might extend into 2026, probably, sometime around the summer, because that's essentially when it's like 5.4 years or something is when the average debt maturity was extended to. And so, yeah, it's like you have these booms and busts, and a lot of people invest in crypto based on these booms and busts. If I know that I can really lock in for like a year and a half and make some life-changing money, I'm going to do that. But ultimately, as things get more and more competitive, as the crypto market gets more and more mature, as you start to get these institutional players that are like manipulating the market and playing the games the way that they play,
it's changed. The market's changed. It's no longer predictable from prior standards because new money's in. It's not just a retail investor. You got, again, Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan.
Bigger buckets of money. Sway that market.
Yeah. And they know they're also playing a different game.
And they know how to play the market game. So they manipulate markets. So they're now like, oh, here's a new market to play with. If I influx this much, it'll probably react this way, right? So now, and that's just saying, some of this stuff is people are playing games beyond us at the level that we are privy to.
And so it's just, I think it just reverts back to the mean of like how to invest is long term. You just got to kind of zoom out. Right. You have to have at least a 5-year time horizon with this, because if it's useful it may not pop off in the 1.5 year like you thought it was, but like if your time horizon is 5 years, then you'll still hit that goal. But no one wants to get rich slow. Everyone,
not in America.
Nah.
I mean, we can't
not
afford
with the
to wait,
lottery.
man.
You got a lottery
and that's changed. And that's changed some of the nature of crypto too, right? I mean, again, incentives matter, and like when Bitcoin was kind of initially thought of, it was thought to be used as a currency, and some people still want to use it as a currency. I mean, you have the split in Bitcoin, right? And so people split on the community of Bitcoin, like currency versus store value. The store value is a relatively new narrative that I think sold crypto and Bitcoin to the larger community versus the new currency, because it's like, why would we switch to a new currency? But store value, these assets do seem to be going kind of crazy. Let me put my money over here. Let me store it and just be safe.
Right.
And like you said, consistently it's returned over time. You've outperformed the S&P, which was the staple of invest. So it's like, okay,
S&P 500.
So it's changed. The nature of it's changed, and that's because again people are getting into it, and people are people. Humans are doing human things. What can I do?
Right.
What could this be? And so that's the beauty of it. And so we don't know where to go. And that's why, again, we're fighting to push people to like not fear this, not run away from it, but embrace it and say, all right, how do we use it? What can it be? And again, the U.S. is a special case. We don't really have a need in the immediate sense for things like crypto in some regards, right?
It's like our needs aren't as urgent.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not as immediate.
We're not like a cash based.
If you're in Argentina,
right,
you need Bitcoin. Inflation's what, 300%? It's like whatever. Like, I need this because this actually holds and retains value that I can trade with. And so, but that's the thing about debt cycles. When you talk about monetary theory, I think the other thing crypto did was it brought conversations around monetary theory a little out of the empires of the financiers to the average everyday person. People are now talking about the gold standard. People are talking about inflationary metrics and economics and
the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, Federal Reserve. These are things that you probably wouldn't have talked about on the average, but. And this is, again, that's that point earlier I made about just kind of this destabilization of our traditional systems. People are now curious, well, what's going on and who's responsible? And then you start getting to these, it's them.
It's like, we don't trust the institution. But like, what is the alternative to not trusting the institutions? Because we don't trust each other either. Right. So it's
we have more distrust for us than we have
we had to create the institutions because we didn't trust each other.
Right.
So,
but now we just make new institutions, and you abstract away some of that power. Yeah, it's data, it's blockchain rails, and now it's going to be AI carrying God knows what.
Seems like a good way for us to really start actually doing business with Africa too, like these underdeveloped or developing nations, like we were talking about, because they already have terrible kind of financial systems and how they do business together already. So you have these fintech company and cryptos that can be a way for us to finally start doing exchange with each other without the dollar.
The long-term investors are looking at Africa and India as their next long-term generational 20, 40 year out. That's already the ones who I consider to be really making those types of plays. That's already the case.
Because it's the population age is like really young in both those countries, and young people are more likely to adopt new technology. But also, it is a matter of like, they went straight to phones, like smartphones, and so a lot of them are using fintech apps that can send money back and forth, but like they may not have a bank account, they may not have a lot of the traditional things that we have.
Their institutional structures aren't there. Their record keeping isn't good, so it's like certain things are same issues here, but we've over time again a little better, but. Where we have 5 lost documents, they got 50, or they just have no documentation standards at all, right? Gotcha. And it's not a failing on their part. It's just those institutions haven't, been born and created and expanded over there to the level that they have here. But because of that, they're ripe for innovation. They're ripe to say, well, here's a new form of record keeping. Here's a new form of financial technology. We know we need that capability. We don't have the institution. Well, let's build the, institution here through this metric.
There was a payment system that was created in Kenya that did that. I think it was Kenya. They made their version of like Venmo or PayPal because there's a big farming nation. So their thing was all you needed was $5 and a cell phone, right? And then they had their banking intermediaries pretty much set up, be that kind of bank, that financial institution behind it. But all of their bank accounts their unique IDs come from their cell phone numbers. So they were trying to get away from the farmers who just had cash to be able to have a bank account, be able to do business outside of just a cash-based system. But to your point, I think he outgrew Venmo like faster than Venmo in like a year, 2 years, just by the early adoption. Like you just said, they adopt things quicker. So I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of opportunity for African Americans here, get out of our shell of being distrusting to ourselves and pessimistic, and really come from a collaboration and a learning standpoint. I think this is a perfect time for us to really do some damage in a good way, right? And not to, turn around and do anything bad to the world. We just want to have our own systems and support and eat and be stable, just like generations before us. It's
People
really all
want
it is.
dignity. They want the ability to earn, right to work, take care of their families. I don't believe everyone in the world wants to quote unquote be a billionaire. If they actually understood what it means to be a billionaire, they'd probably be like, no. Right. But people do need the ability to take care of themselves, their families. And these institutions we currently have, they're failing. They're just failing, or they're just not accessible. And if there are new accessible ways and means to do this, we need to explore them. And that's just the bottom line. Because as far as I'm concerned, most of the things have been tried before. Yeah. We've tried all the things. We've done all the things. Mm-hmm. Okay, y'all can keep trying the old things. I'm going to go try the new things, because that's, in my mind, that's how we keep moving forward. And I think we'll find some benefits out of it. Like I said, the future is now, so...
Final thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I also, in general, it's like there's a lot of pieces in crypto that we didn't talk about. Like, okay, what are the different categories of coins?
Yeah.
And how do people actually use them? Like, okay, what is a layer 1? What is a layer 2? We already talked about real world assets and DeFi and the AI piece, but there's also infrastructure plays. And so I do want to take a little bit of time to just kind of explain that piece.
Okay.
But yeah, so I guess this just might be better as like a history piece. But when Bitcoin came out, they created what was called like the proof of work protocol. And the idea behind proof of work is that Bitcoin needs energy to keep going in order to actually run it. And so they need to incentivize people to actually provide that energy. Those are what miners are. And so when you incentivize those miners to provide energy, you pay them in Bitcoin. And that's basically how the system works. And so what Ethereum came later, and it wasn't Ethereum that invented proof of stake, but they kind of adopted proof of stake over time. And the idea behind proof of stake is the fact that like, you have these validators that have to have a certain amount of Ethereum in order to become validators. And they're the ones that process these transactions, essentially provide what is necessary to move it forward. And if there is any like funny business that is detected in that transaction, essentially they lose all the money that they put into that in order to be a validator. And so... Yeah.
It's a penalty for you right there.
Yeah, I mean...
Gotta incentivize,
right,
man.
I bet you that'll get rid of a lot of unethical behavior. If you get in trouble for doing something unethical, we're just going to take all of your money. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And so, like, those are the systems that allow these blockchains to work. And in order to build your own unique blockchain, either you have to create one of those systems from scratch, like your own proof of work system, and have to find your own individual miners, or you do the proof of stake system and have to find your own individual stakers and validators. And so those are what are considered layer 1s. Like those are just regular blockchains. That is the base like settlement layer. When you hear layer 2s, those are for people that want to use blockchains like Ethereum to actually build their own coin. So one of the things that Ethereum actually kind of developed on was not only smart contracts that allow you to make agreements on the blockchain and allow you to program the money, but also they allow people to create their own coin and use the Ethereum infrastructure to actually power it. And so that is where the layer 2s come in. That's when you hear about like Arbitrum for Ethereum or Base that Coinbase created. That is Coinbase's layer 2. And so when you hear about layer 1s and layer 2s, it's really important to understand why they're necessary and why they exist. But that's that generally. In terms of, I'm thinking some other infrastructure plays. What do you think?
I mean, I think in terms of layer 1 and layer 2s, you get into the root of it because most of the infrastructure that's being built, they're layer 2s. Layer 2s are just cheaper. Like the easiest way to think about it is they're cheaper and faster. So those first layer 1s, because of the way they were made, they're clunky, they're slow. If you've ever heard anybody who talks about, crypto, and they talk about gas fees and stuff like that, that's where you get stuff like that because you're essentially you're paying to move the money, and that fee that you're paying goes to support the network. So it goes out to the miners and the people who are essentially keeping it up, right? So, but the processing time, because if everyone's trying to push a transaction through, you pay essentially for getting ranked in order to get your transaction through, and that a transaction could fail. And so like those are issues with that early crypto space, which has kept a lot of people away because it's like, why would I can lose more money trying to send my money. Why would I use that? That makes no sense. And so that's the early. So layer 2s were created to solve those issues. And so now you have, cheap fees where less than 5 for, cent to move millions, thousands of dollars, right? And so those layer 2s fix that in that sense. So I'd say the infrastructure, we can get deeper into it, but I think layer 1 and layer 2 is a good distinction to start with.
Yeah, it's like when Ethereum, I wouldn't say when it first came out, but like let's say like last bull run, so probably around like 2020, it would be times where Ethereum was so busy that if you wanted to even send like a $2 or $3,
$30,
the fee would be like $40, $50. And yeah, so like the layer 2 is, okay, instead of having that fee be its own transaction, it's every block from the layer 2 is just one transaction. And that just makes it run faster and quicker. But then you also have alternatives like Solana that was built that was like, we don't need a layer 2 because we saw Ethereum shortcomings and that we just programmed this with this in mind. And so this is basically just a faster blockchain, but what you're sacrificing for speed and cost
is security and centralization.
Yeah.
It's trade-offs. Most things in life is trade-offs. And these are all tech designs, and it's a niche space developer-wise, so not a lot of people have the knowledge base to make these, make them well, make them good. And so, but I think that's going to change, and it is changing. You're getting better qualified developers. People are now like, oh, I want to actually learn Solidity, which is smart contract development and stuff. So, we know that these things are possible. Now it's up to us to start iterating on them. And so again, layer 1s were cheap, clunky, and slow, but they allowed you to do something you couldn't do before. How do you make that better? Then you get layer 2s, and then there'll be, you want to call them layer 3s or whatever, they'll just have everything, So we're in that exponential runway when we talk about infrastructure, and we need it. We need the infrastructure, but along with that infrastructure, we need regulation.
Yeah, I was going to say, to segue into that, talk a little bit about what regulations are in place to kind of, because it's to the average person, I know this seems like the wild west, and it kind of is, but what are, if any, regulations are in place right now? Is it the SEC? Is it ETF? Like, who's governing this?
Well, no one's okay. So I guess, and we have to talk about
There's a huge fight.
Trump. And I guess the silver lining of this administration, and if there is one, is that there is an opening for the innovative space of crypto to be, considered. And so when you talk about the Genius Bill, which, allows stable coins or the issuance of stable coins and all that, there isn't super guidance in there, right? Because you've had essentially the last 5 or 6 years of just like, no. It's securities, you don't do it. Complete blackout in the U.S. particularly. Other countries, I think China banned it 8 times. They'll probably ban it 2 more again. They did all that. Because everyone's just like, what is this? Why are we using it? What do we do? But those who are wanting to adopt and figure it out, like they're now trying to figure out, how do we actually put these things together? So Wyoming, certain states are coming together and creating using precedented legal structures to then apply them to crypto. But that at the federal level, the SEC, we have a crypto czar now. Their job is to tell us as the retail and the people building what is acceptable, what is not. The beauty is
that's the thing is like when you talk about the SEC and the cryptos are, we're not even really clear on who actually regulates crypto. It's like there's actually current fight between the SEC, which governs securities, which are, pieces of companies, versus the body that governs commodities and like has the futures out in Chicago. So like we don't know in a lot of cases, like whether a lot of cryptocurrencies are considered securities, like their actual piece of a company, versus whether they're considered commodity, like how a lot of people call Bitcoin digital gold, like gold is a commodity. And so there is still a fight on the federal level of who actually governs this and what is this actually like categorized as
in the U.S.
Yeah,
in the U.S.
And because we're front runners around financialization, people will probably model some of us, but there are other places in the world.
Where's some places that's getting this right?
Marshall Islands, Seychelles,
it's
Switzerland,
also,
countries that are getting this right. Have
well,
good regulations.
they're they at least took the step to say, all right, let's figure out what this is and how do we implement it in a safe way. I think just blacked out and said no one touches it. No, we just didn't consider it at all. So we're kind of playing catch up in regards. Other places have already kind of started figuring this out. Like, it exists, it's useful in some way. We're not going to keep people from it.
I'd say you really compare it to like the EU, and the same thing is happening with crypto as what happened with options and like futures and like all that other stuff. Because what happened with options and futures when they first like were created as a concept, the US didn't really want much to do with it. And that allowed the EU to come in and really like be the leader in actually writing the legislation for a lot of that stuff. Of course, the US eventually caught up to it, but because they were already like the king at the top of the tower, they weren't really looking for an advantage in, competing in the rest of the world. And so the same thing's kind of happening with crypto. You kind of have the EU trying to take more of a leadership role and like, how do we actually regulate this? And the US is, again,
we're just now starting the conversations. Yeah. And like I said, they're just now starting official conversations.
But passing bills at the same time while you're having conversations. Like, how do you pass a bill, but y'all haven't even figured out?
And that's my issue. It's like, again, like I said, they're using it for their ends.
Right.
How do we know as regular everyday consumers that the policies and regulations that they're creating won't end up recreating some of the similar issues that you're trying to escape from? Yeah. And that's where I'm like, we have to get our lobbyists, get our public defender groups, get them to start learning about this, understand what it is, understand what it does. We got to put ourselves out there, similarly.
Yeah, it's currently like the legislators just have a bunch of people that are being scammed by crypto come to them and complain, and
I lost my money.
They're also seeing all these different headlines because, like, what did it say? Like, you don't hear about the planes that landed safely. Mm-hmm. You only hear about the ones that crashed. Right. And so a lot of the legislators, like, they don't understand it, but they know they have to do something because of the headlines that are making it to them are all terrible. And so that's why they would do something like pass a bill that they don't really truly understand what they're regulating, but they're still trying to make moves to regulate.
Because they're trying to give you some certainty that we're on it. We're on the job. That's really what I saw that is. It's like, hey, this thing's happening. We're on the job. And to be fair, the builders have been calling for it because, again, I'd rather us be regulated than be iced out of doing business in the U.S., which was the case. Yeah. They blocked the internet, to allow you to access exchanges and other things. You just couldn't get it here in the U.S. There are ways, but... I
know some ways to get it in. So, I mean, looking ahead, like, what are some potential narratives that you're looking at from that space? Or
AI crypto. I think AI crypto for me is the big one. It's still nascent because no one knew it could work. I think it was on Twitter. We were on Twitter, and some guy, I can't remember the name of the bot, but he spun up a bot, and he gave it a crypto wallet. And then it started basically making content, and then it was getting paid from the content it was making. And then it started spending the money and, like, put it into, like... But he just did it as an experiment because, AIs can't hold bank accounts. They can hold a crypto wallet. Right. And so I'm like, again, that space for me is just, like, very interesting. Very, like, just, what does it mean for a business to now have marketers that can go and, run a task, pay for whatever. I don't know. Like, right. It's probably even beyond where we can go. But that's the space I'm really interested in.
Yeah.
What about you?
It's like I think, and I think there are a lot of more real world uses that aren't really being acknowledged because the people in those industries don't really know that crypto even has an application in their industry. Like a lot of the easy applications are things like, you familiar with I want to say Holochain? Holochain is like basically decentralized Wi-Fi.
Okay.
And so, instead of having miners that provide energy, you just buy this box from them, and as long as you run that box as part of like a Wi-Fi network, kind of like a hotspot. You get enough people around a hotspot, then you have like a whole Wi-Fi signal like across an entire city and things of that nature. And so things like that are only going to get more popular. Things like the insurance, I feel like the first person who really cracks insurance, because it's like most of insurance money is actually paid to have people tell you that they're not going to pay you out for the thing that they promised they were going to pay you out for.
Right.
Whereas like we could literally just pay into an account, set this as the conditions for a payout, and just once those conditions are hit, it automatically pays out, and it's way cheaper than literally paying for people to tell you that we're not going to pay for that shit.
Right. It's a better insurance system.
It's a better insurance
and your money
system.
actually pays for the things when you need it.
Exactly. And I think things like that are going to get a lot more popular. And then like, I think the same thing that's happening with AI in China is kind of going to happen with cryptocurrency in China as well, just because the U.S., like, the narrative is always, how do we make the most money possible about this? Capitalism. Whereas, like, in China, the narrative is like, okay, how do we use this to make the next 50 years, like, be the best 50 years that we've experienced? And so, just for example, on the AI perspective, the U.S. focused on, just provide more and more power and more powerful models and things of that nature, where China is focusing on like, no, there are certain industries that we have, and it's like, let's train it on quality data that actually comes from people that are working in this industry. And they also have the advantage of, being a pseudo communist country, like they have a board seat on like every major corporation. So like when it comes to how do you get the data to train it, the corporations are a lot of times the ones keeping this data. And so they can train it directly on that and actually have more useful applications specifically for certain things. Like, for example, DeepSeek, one of the Chinese AI models, just beat a bunch of doctors in like a diagnostics competition. And like the doctors got it right. They made the right diagnosis, but like of course it took time for them to do that, whereas DeepSeek did it in like a few seconds.
And that's because they're feeding the data from doctors
Exactly.
instead of just the internet.
Exactly.
Right.
And so I feel like with crypto, it's going to be the same thing. Once you start to get those industries, like with the decentralized Wi-Fi and with the different decentralized models in the industry, you're going to see a lot more of that. You know what I'm saying, when it comes into cryptocurrency. And it's probably going to start in China just because they're far more incentivized to do things like that.
Right.
And so, yeah, I feel like it'll become more useful and just less of a tool to actually just make money. It'll be looked at more of as a software.
And decentralized science. That was another one. I think that's interesting. Because normally science is, someone's got to pay for that. Someone's got to pay for the time that I am spending reading all these research articles and synthesizing it. And now, even as I thought about it, AI might even disrupt DeSci or become complementary to DeSci.
I think it become complementary.
Yeah, because it's like research is time intensive and it takes a lot, and you got to pay people livelihoods to keep doing all this reading. So like now you can basically pool money to community research. So if someone needs to do research in the neighborhood and you're willing to pay them, you can pull some money there, and then once the job is completing the research and you prove it, then you get paid out.
And it's also incentive though. It's like, who pays for a lot of these studies and why? Like the study on sugar was paid for by the sugar lobby. Like the study on
to control narratives.
Yeah, the study on grain was paid for by corn and wheat lobbies. Like the people that are oftentimes paying for these studies have ulterior motives that they want these studies to prove.
Yep.
And so as a result, the data that they're going to get is going to be reflective of what they want their worldview to look like. And yeah, this just kind of like removes the incentive. It's like the people with the money oftentimes have ulterior motives of things they want to prove. And now it's like, no, these are people who actually want the problem solved that can now fund these things in ways that they couldn't before.
And now the quality of this data and information is going to be beneficial instead of,
Hopefully.
Ideally.
Research is a crazy space, but no. Yeah.
It's like learning you're not supposed to be drinking milk. Oh, you told me my whole life milk makes my bones strong. Now you're telling me 25 years later it makes them weaker. I wonder who made that up.
I know. It's like a whole food pyramid is just wrong.
The whole food pyramid is wrong.
Yeah. And
we all know that. I can see that.
Hey, whoever said we need to eat bacon, shout out to them. For breakfast.
And whoever said we need cheese.
They can go.
Black community does not approve of that.
I mean, it was
most
like,
lactose intolerant people I know.
It's like adults aren't supposed to be drinking milk anyway.
No. And I guess another cool question about that is like, and I think we already kind of said this, but what do you wish more people understood about crypto to kind of help prepare for these kind of, next potential narratives and where it's going? Like, what do you wish more people knew about it?
I'd say similar to AI. It's here. You might not like it. You might think there's some issues with it, but similar to the internet. I mean, similar to any level of innovation and industrialization at scale, you got to roll with it. You have to start to think, how do I incorporate this? I mean, there are people today who still don't know how to type on a computer, right? But I remember having computer classes, right?
You'd have CSC is what we called it at Hampton University.
So we just have to, that's my whole thing, right? We can't keep our heads in the sand. There are things happening to, Dante's point earlier, stop focusing on the crashing planes. Find the planes that are landing, make more of those. The crashing planes are important. You need to learn from those failures, but make more of the planes that land. And if we can get to that space, I think we'll be better off just as a community going forward.
Yeah, I think that right now people are really disenfranchised with like life in general, just because there's so little trust in our institutions. But most people don't see an alternative. Most people just are like, oh yeah, everything is terrible, all these problems
what can
with
you
our
do?
leaders, but like, what can you do? Because you don't really have the power to change any of these things. And it's like with cryptocurrency, you actually do have the power to create a new system. That's not to say that you won't create the same problems on that new system.
Or some new problems.
On that new system. But you do have the opportunity to create these new things. And that there are alternatives. It's like before there was, if you were just really distrustful in a dollar, if you saw that our politicians keep making the dollar weaker and weaker, every year, if you've seen that historically every country has gone down to zero, like the dollar, like the British pound is the most successful and one of the oldest currencies we have. It's lost 99% of its value since it's been in existence. And so you didn't have an alternative to like not buy into that system. Like when we started using dollars, even in the US, they had to ban gold to really make that shake. And so we just need to, I feel like, believe that there can be an alternative, that there can be better solutions, and that now we actually have the tools to build those alternative solutions.
Right.
And so
it's people power.
Yes.
It's always people power, but again, it's a calcified old system versus a new system. It's like, it's been done. People do it. It's just we have new technological means.
It's a learning curve today.
Yeah, it's a learning curve.
Right. It's so much focus on tearing the system down, and it's like, the system doesn't work for a lot of people. So it's like,
but you got to put something up.
You have to have a replacement.
Yeah,
and it's like, look,
no one wants to focus on the replacement, and
that's why I never get into it. People that want to burn stuff down, right? Because it doesn't really make sense.
It's
like
cathartic.
you're that's an emotional reaction, number one. And number two is short-sighted, right? What are we going to do tomorrow? If you burn all of this down, what are we going to do tomorrow?
Well, the idea is that the system would just work if the people who are in place in power would just do right by the people. But what I think people miss is that systems incentivize. And so if you want to do the quote unquote right thing with your money today, if you listen to anybody who's been teaching about you already know what to do. You're going to end up recreating the same system because as soon as you get some money, you got to hide your taxes. Yeah. Once you got to hide your taxes, now you start playing into the same game because it's already incentivized that that's how you quote unquote win, but that's a very short-sighted and limited game. And Peter Thiel, for all his evil, already blew it up. Capitalism is about monopolies. Mm-hmm. I win. No one else. I own it all.
That's Rothschild model. Yeah. They don't believe in competition.
No, exactly. It's like, why? What competition for what? Why? I win mine. Mm-hmm. And so, like, he's already pulled the shade off the curtain. That's what they inherently believe. Philanthropy and all those other things, that's the cover to say we're being nice. But it's like, look, the money game is already set. Yep. If you want to play that money game, that game exists. Here's a new money game that can be created for more people than just a set group of folks who have already essentially had wealth and continue to play in that wealth.
Yeah, it's just like systems are really difficult to build and even more difficult to maintain over time. So it's like we've had these systems that work in certain ways and we're all focused on the way that the systems don't work, but we never actually focus on the way that the systems did work. And it's like these systems are built with potentially good intentions at times. And then over time, they slowly eroded because you have to make a decision. You have to make a series of trade-offs in order to actually make something work. And so, what people end up doing is they'll burn the whole system down to the ground. And it's like sometimes a system generally is like you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But like what rises from the ashes? You can't live in ash. Like you have to build something else. And what you'll figure out as you try to build some of these new systems is like, oh, that was why they did it this way. Oh, this is why this thing was in place. Oh, and it just start to learn that. So it's like, we do have to focus more on what does that reconstruction actually look like? And as you start to try to build your own systems, just like, okay, this is what they got right. This is what they got wrong. This is how we can incentivize and try to address what they got wrong, but ultimately there's only a few options about what you could do in order to build up these systems. So we've
been around for thousands of years.
I know.
We've tried a lot of the things. We've tried a lot of the things.
None of these ideas are new. Right.
No.
But I think I like you put a spirituality component to it that I feel like is missing in all of this too, right? Like if you're not ready for that internally, all this stuff we're talking about, when you go to, no matter how much you learn about it, right? You could be the smartest, the most well versed. If you're not right on the inside and your self-awareness and how you see other people and groups of people, then whatever you're going to use that knowledge to build is going to keep recreating these problems because we're not dealing with the root issue, which is the humanity in each other, which is that distress we're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. We could sit here and talk about this. I trust you guys, right? But somebody walking across Bryce right now, they don't know you. They'll see you and be like, man, I don't know that. You know that?
And it's like, I trust you, but I trust you in certain ways. It's like there's also different levels of trust. What do you trust them with? It's I might trust your character, but do I trust your knowledge? Do I trust your ability to execute on things? There's a lot of things that go into that. So we gotta be clear.
Yeah. And care about others. I mean, I think fundamentally our basis is that we care about people enough to say that we see how this can be beneficial. Mm-hmm. We want people to understand that, and that's why we're doing this. If we want to just do this to make money and go on about our day, that's very easy. We don't have to talk about any of this, not to tell nobody the systems exist. We got it. Hey, catch up. That's not useful for anybody. And for me personally, I don't think I can hoard knowledge. If I know something, I'm gonna give it up because it can help you. If it can help you, I'm gonna give it to you. Hopefully, it does something. But I have no reason to hold this knowledge, and so we got to get people to start getting what we've taken the time to, figure out. And again, the systems and the tools to replace some of these things exist. We just have to make them work for us and not work for the people that they've always worked for, which is what is happening. It's getting to that point where they're now adopting and saying, how do we use this for our ends and means? We have to be in that same fight.
Not to say I got to give y'all kudos, man. My personal knowledge and growth in this industry has really come from you guys, right? A lot of the times over the last couple of years, just giving your flowers. I mean, you guys are always open. You'll carve some time out to ask answer our crazy questions. And now, we've taken it into our actual business in a way that you guys are talking about. Like, okay, well, now that I have a better understanding of it, well, how do we use this utility to empower our community, right? To empower our people, to empower us to have ownership, right? I just got to give y'all flowers for that. So this podcast is dope. The information is dope. We need more conversations like this. And man, I just really appreciate y'all for just doing this. Like, we need more people willing to just, Ubuntu. I am because you are.
Yeah.
We really got to get back to that.
Yes, sir.
So, man, I appreciate it.
I appreciate you for having the conversation.